live long and prosper. So in this video series, I'm going to be talking through the social justice elements of every episode of the original series of Star Trek. The thing that inspired this project was actually a Fox News article which argued that Star Trek has in some way betrayed its traditional commitment to sort of political neutrality or middle ground by embracing progressive politics. In this series, we're going to see that Star Trek has always embraced progressive politics, and it's always been aspirational for social justice in various senses. I am taking a broad perspective on social justice here, so that may include multiple different types of social justice, whether that's racial, whether that's economic, whether that's religious, whether that's abilities, gender and sexuality, anything broadly considered. I will go through every episode. Some of the episodes I will interview fellow Trekkies and talk with them about it. And then below, in the descriptions, I will give you additional information about the episodes, particularly their original air date, who wrote the screenplay, and who directed that episode. I also want to dedicate this series to my dad, Michael Allen Zapkin. He was an OG Trekkie from back in the day, and it was watching the original series with him that I came to love Star Trek. In this video, we're going to talk about the Enterprise incident. So in this episode, they start out with McCoy entering information into his medical log. That information being that Kirk has grown increasingly irritable, he's grown increasingly temperamental, and McCoy sort of setting the groundwork for seeing him as no longer being fit for command. And then we see Kirk come in to the bridge, he's kind of being a dick to everybody, and then he orders Sulu to turn the ship around and head into the Romulan neutral zone in violation of the treaty between the Federation and the Romulan Empire. You can think of the neutral zone as a kind of demilitarized zone, the way you have between North and South Korea, right? It's a militarized border that neither side crosses, because crossing it or entering it even is seen as an act of aggression. Well, Kirk, straight through the neutral zone into Romulan territory. Some Romulans show up. They apparently have a cloaking device, and so their ships just appear surrounding the Enterprise. And they're basically like, hey, Enterprise, you're in our space, so either you surrender or we destroy you. Kirk is not thrilled with these alternatives, and essentially he and Spock are now sort of in conflict with one another, because Spock confronts him about the fact that they should not have gone into the neutral zone, let alone into Romulan space. So we get that tension introduced. Eventually, they get a message from the Romulans that the Romulan commander wants to see them, wants to see Kirk and Spock on board her flagship. So they beam over, two Romulans beam over to the Enterprise to be hostages, and there you go. Kirk is a dick to the Romulan commander. He overtly lies to her about why they are there. He claims that they had instrument malfunctions and just drifted into the Romulan space before they realized the error. And she's like, that doesn't sound like something that would happen. I don't really believe you. Then she brings Spock in, and she's like, hey, Spock, you're a Vulcan. Vulcans can't lie. Is that what happened? And he's basically like, I plead the fifth. But then later, Spock fairly quickly sort of turns on Kirk and is like, yeah, we had no orders to enter the neutral zone, let alone Romulan space. Captain Kirk acted on his own initiative. I believe he's not fit for command, and he is in fact insane. Kirk gets taken to the Romulan brig. He injures himself by crashing into the force field. McCoy gets called over. He's dealing with Kirk. Then the Romulan commander and Spock go down to the brig. They sort of see Kirk. The Romulan commander has been trying to sort of win Spock over and be like, hey, come on over to the Romulan side. I will give you your own ship to command and we can, hang out. Yeah, it's this weird, seduction bit. Kirk is somewhat recovered when the Romulan commander and Spock show up, and he's basically like, I'll kill you, Spock, and he charges at Spock, and Spock's like, boom, Vulcan death grip, right to the face. So Kirk is now dead, because the Vulcan death grip does what it says on the tin. McCoy takes Kirk's body back over to the Enterprise, where, Kirk wakes up. Which is not normally how death works, but Kirk wakes up. And McCoy reveals that Spock had just given him a nerve pinch, and basically the whole shtick here has been they are trying to sort of gain the trust of the Romulan commander, while also getting them to think that Kirk is dead, and McCoy is going to put Romulan ears and eyebrows on Kirk so that he will look like a Romulan. They're going to take one of the uniforms from the Romulan prisoners, and they're going to beam Kirk back over to the Romulan ship, where he is going to steal the cloaking device, beam back over to the Enterprise. They're going to try and book it out of there as quickly as they can, hook up the cloaking device, and hope to hell it works, so they don't get blasted out of space by these 3 Romulan ships. Basically, the plan goes swimmingly. I mean, virtually no hitches except for the fact that Spock ends up still being over on the Romulan ship, basically facing execution. He manages to stall by appealing for the Romulan right of statement, in which he just gets to talk for a while to sort of make his statement before he is slowly put to death. And in that time, the Enterprise manages to lock onto his life signals, which are slightly different than those of the Romulans, even though they are genetically very similar. And they beam Spock aboard. The Romulan commander is like, no, and grabs onto him, and so she gets beamed aboard as well. The Romulan ships are trying to destroy the Enterprise, and they manage to get the cloaking device working, and they turn and get out of the rain, or out of the line of fire, etc., etc. Everybody wins, except the Romulans, who lose. So, I mean, that's the premise of the episode. One of the social justice elements here is, of course, the espionage element to this, and the idea of military secrets, advancing military technology, and so on and so on. The Romulans developed the cloaking device to give them a strategic advantage over the Federation, which of course it would do. I mean, and this is made very clear in the Enterprise officers' discussion of this. If the Romulans have a cloaking device, they could show up and attack a starbase, they could show up and attack a planet without that starbase or planet being able to get its defenses up in time. So it's an incredible threat to the Federation. So they go to steal it. Now, this is, of course, a big problem with military competition, right? Between nations, between empires, between competing factions like NATO and the USSR during the Cold War in 1968, when this episode premieres. This is an episode, or this is an issue that we get kind of following along the same lines as something like A Private Little War, where the balance of power question is addressed, right? Because in A Private Little War, Kirk is friends with the Hill people, the Klingons are supporting the villagers, and the Klingons have given the villagers flintlocks and encouraged them to kill the Hill people. And so Kirk says, in order to maintain the balance of power, we have to give the Hill people flintlocks and encourage them to defend themselves. We have the same kind of issue here. The Klingons have developed an advanced technology that gives them a strategic advantage, and so the Federation has to get a hold of that technology to reverse engineer it and to figure out how to defeat it. And this was a big component of Cold War era spy games, right? The development of advanced technology, the U-2 spy plane, for instance. This was a high-altitude spy plane that was supposed to be undetectable from the ground, that the U.S. developed to spy on the Soviet Union. Again, these are things that give you a huge strategic advantage, but they also encourage you to continue the conflict. When you think that you can beat the other side, it's much, much easier to continue down a path that leads to violence, that leads to destruction, that leads to conflict, etc., etc. So there's that element of it. We also have a weird aspect with the Romulan commander, because she is very quickly willing to accept that Spock would turn on the Federation and turn on Captain Kirk to join the Romulans. And it doesn't really make that much sense that she would believe that, because she knows about Vulcan integrity. She knows about Vulcan honor, because she appeals to these things. She directly says to Spock, on the basis of your Vulcan honor, tell me the truth about whether or not this was an instrument's malfunction. So clearly she knows that Spock comes from a culture of strong integrity. She clearly knows that he would not easily betray the Federation, whom he's served as an officer for decades. I mean, it doesn't make that much sense that she is so easily fooled in this way. And I'm not 100% sure that it's because she's female that she's so easily fooled, but I'm also not 100% sure that's not the reason here. I think there may very well be a sort of sexist element to this, in which it's, oh, those women, they're so easy to fool when you put a handsome Vulcan in front of them. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that that's it necessarily, but for a Romulan commander, somebody who is at the top of the Romulan military establishment, leading a fleet of other ships, it seems incredibly unlikely that she would be taken in such a way, and so quickly. So I don't know how else to really explain it, other than that there's an element of sexism here.